Please note that the information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Hey, welcome to Fertility Ain't Fair, the podcast where we normalize the conversations around infertility, reproductive health, and wellness. I'm your host, Brittany Jackson, here to share laughs, tears, and aha moments as we dive into our wild world with a girl who truly gets it by sharing personal insights from my own experience. Along the way, we're joined by guests who open up about their journeys, the highs, the heartbreaks, and everything in between. So whether you're new to the infertility world, looking for support, or just trying to figure it all out, this is your space to feel seen, heard, and maybe even laugh along the way. Real, raw, unfiltered, because fertility, it ain't fair, but you don't have to face it alone. Hey, welcome back to this episode of Fertility Ain't Fair, the podcast. I'm your host, Britt, and we are on episode 2 of 2025. So if you missed part 1 of this series, go ahead, press pause, go ahead on back and listen to our girl, Hannah. She is also from Pivot Nutrition Coaching. But today on this episode, we have the actual founder and owner of that business, Danielle Rancourt, aka Dani, and she is going to be giving us all that we need to know when it comes to functional lab testing and nutrition. She is a registered dietitian as well as a certified sports dietitian based out of North Dakota. And she brings the gems, but she also brings them in a very relatable, understandable, and easy to just digest way. So again, if you missed part 1 of this series, go ahead, check it out, and then come on back over to this episode. We get into functional testing, lab testing, where to go get them, what tests should you look out for as a woman or someone who is trying to conceive or, hitting barriers in your fertility journey. This is the episode for you and in general for your wellness. I say in this episode that, I used to be very, very big on the 3 things for our community. It was for infertility, reproductive health, and motherhood or parenthood for all. And I've actually changed our mission to represent wellness for all. So if you are looking to get well this year and for the next however many years we are on this crazy planet, then get your notepad and tune in for this episode. Well, we are back for another episode of Fertility Ain't Fair, the podcast, and we have Dani hopping in with Fertility Ain't Fair. Welcome to our space.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, we're so excited to have you on our part 2 of 2. With Pivot Consulting, and we had Hannah on our first episode of the year. Now we have you, and we're super excited to dive into all of the things that you can bring to the table for our listenership. And we were just talking offline about making this very, very easy to digest. And no pun intended, we're discussing nutrition, all that good stuff. But seriously, we always want this to be a space that's welcoming, that's relatable, and you can take parts of this, use what you need, share it to somebody else who needs it, but you can explain it, understand it in a good, way that gives you a little bit, but not too much that it makes it just kind of unreachable. So I am, as always, super excited to dive in, and we always have so much to unpack on our episodes because it's never black and white here. So let's go ahead and jump in. How we start with every guest is this big question that seems simple, but could also be a lot of things. But Dani, how do you define yourself as of today, right now, in your world?
Mm-hmm. It's funny because when I read that question, I haven't been asked that in a really long time. And I used to always define myself as a hockey player. That's what I did my whole life. I was a college hockey player, and that was the answer forever. And then now I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess now I would say I'm a dietitian, I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, but a mom. That's probably the most important title that I have now.
I love it. That's very cool. I haven't met too many hockey players also that are female. So you're a badass. Congratulations. That's very cool. I did read that in your bio. I was like, okay, girl, hockey, college hockey.
I'm Canadian. Most Canadians are hockey players. So
okay, fair. But still, nonetheless, very, very cool. And for us who are not Canadian, we're like, oh, that's different. So it's very unique. And I guess, how did you, transitioning from being, athlete, college athlete, all of those good things into this space of, dietitian, nutritionalist, like all of these things. How did you wind up? Of course, we'll get into your business later, but how did you just wind up kind of in this industry and field?
Yeah, it's all because of hockey, to be honest. My life goal was to play college hockey. And once I finally got there, I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's good. Now I have to like start from zero, big fish, small pond. And I was, fighting for ice time. Everybody was good. And after my freshman year, where I did not get to play a lot as a freshman, that's a typical college athlete situation. You're riding the bench and you're waiting for your time to shine. I was like, no, I didn't work my whole life and, train on weekends and miss out on, I even skipped my high school graduation to go to a recruiting tournament. That's how dedicated I was to become a D1 athlete. I was like, I didn't do all of this to sit on the bench. So the summer after freshman year, I said, I need to do something different. So that's when I started eating like an athlete, getting really into sports nutrition. And then I came back and I was way faster, way stronger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to not become a doctor because I was pre-med biology and I'm going to be a sports dietitian. So that's actually what my master's degree in is sports nutrition, because that was my original plan. And my first big girl job was for Exos. I was working with athletes, but because I'm in North Dakota, there were some athletes, mostly hockey players, but mostly just regular adults, teachers and parents and dentists that wanted to work with a dietitian to look and feel their best. So I became a little obsessed with like adult weight management and just helping regular people feel awesome. So that's when I started getting certifications in weight management and, a little bit later diving into functional testing. So that's kind of how I became a dietitian. Never thought that I would run a business. Most dietitians take 0 business classes. Like sales is not our thing, business. But COVID kind of it was a silver lining, really. It kind of pushed me into that direction. Gyms were shutting down with COVID, including mine. And I was like, I need a backup plan. So that's when I took this random course on starting an online business, and it blew up overnight. And I was like, oh, I need to hire like 7 people.
That's a very, very cool story. But I love how it all connected back to what you just said about having average people, your everyday person, and wanting them to feel awesome or making them feel awesome. So let's get into the awesome space. So I feel like, my kind of like tagline or mission used to be really normalizing the conversations around infertility, reproductive health. And then it was motherhood, then it was parenthood, and now it's wellness. I changed it for this year because, again, all of those things could fall into this space and they also could not, because that's the reality of our community, right? But wellness does appear, I think, or should appear in all the avenues in which we're talking about. And for me, it has been a super personal journey and really intentional in the last, I would say, like year or so. But definitely, I mentioned to Hannah, the last back half of 2024 was just really all about that. And so it was getting to a place of having a nutritionist on my team of people that I'd say, my kind of your board directors, my wellness board of directors, if you will, never having even considered it before and thought it was kind of out of reach, or I didn't need it because I eat well, I cook, I know what you're supposed to eat. I know the whole foods, all that stuff. And then diving into nutrition, how it plays a part in my, chronic pain conditions or my endometriosis, my fibroids, just all these different things that I felt like for years, every doctor that I came across, especially when it came to the infertility space, kind of just brushed it off like, well, it's common. It's common. It's common.
Right.
And so common turned to normal, which I want to be very clear. Common does not mean things are normal. But common became normal in my definition. And I just ignored all these other, I think, red flags from, my gut health and different side effects to things, food being a trigger for certain things with pain. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could do all this over again, I would start here at the root of everything and then figure out, what's happening in other parts of the body. So I'm glad we're jumping in first nutrition because it is super buzzy. It's, everyone wants to be healthier and all these different ways to do it, right? Social media is abundant with the ways to become the best nutritious person, but a lot of it is not specific and it's very general, and I think it's overwhelming. So if someone's like, okay, I want to start to figure out a way to dive into my nutritional life, how should they even begin that process?
Yeah. Well, if you're listening to this and you are feeling confused and overwhelmed with nutrition, just know that you're not alone. That's most people. When I jump on discovery calls and my application says, why are you reaching out? People are like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm confused. I don't know where to start. I Googled this. TikTok says this. And that's what I love about the discovery call. You're just really getting to know the person and figuring out like, what are they trying to achieve and what's the solution? And if I don't have the solution, I love a good referral. That's how it should be. And so if you don't know where to start, God, there's so many different ways that you can go about this. If you're into books, let's say that you know nothing about nutrition. There's a million nutrition books. One of them that we like, it's my assistant's favorite book. It's Gentle Nutrition by Rachel Hartley. So that's if you're a book person. Of course, there's like Nutrition for Dummies. I don't know what's in there. I actually was curious. Podcasts, of course, are another great way to learn about nutrition on your own. This is for people that are like, well, I want to do it on my own first. But finding a podcast with someone with credentials, someone legit, not just an influencer or Susan who lost 20 pounds and now she's telling people how to lose 20 pounds. The thing about nutrition is that it's something everybody does. And even though I don't know every single thing about nutrition, I think that everybody thinks they're a nutrition expert in 2025 because everybody eats. It's the one profession where everyone kind of dabbles in it. And so the one thing I want to make sure that I say is that nutrition is not one size fits all. However, the basics, mastering the foundation goes a long way. And most people that reach out to me that don't feel good or they're struggling with XYZ, they don't have a solid foundation of nutrition habits. So Susan's like, oh my gosh, I feel awful. I'm fatigued. I have no energy. I can't lose weight. And I'm like, okay, tell me about your diet. What'd you have for dinner? Cereal. Okay, how often do you strength train? Oh, I don't. So mastering the basics is always step one, and doing those foundational things consistently go a long way. My favorite saying is do the simple things savagely well. Of course, when it comes to infertility and stuff like that, we got to dig deeper. A lot of people are doing everything right and they're still not getting anywhere. But most people are not doing the basics. Only 10% of Americans are eating the recommended daily amount of fruits and veggies. This is simple. Most people have access to fruits and veggies. So start there. People tend to overcomplicate nutrition, and I really try to simplify it as much as possible.
I appreciate that because, again, it is overwhelming. You don't know what you don't know. Again, a lot of things that I learned in the last 6 to 8 months were things that, again, I thought I knew a whole lot, or I thought I knew enough, I know what to eat. I know what not to eat. I know, all these different things. But again, to your point, like we're still not eating balanced, or we're not eating for our body or for what our body needs, and your body changes, right? So, I think I agree. Like the foundational things will always be key, but there might be some things during different points that you need more of or less of. And again, depending upon what your goals are, right, that diet or, that nutrition list of what you're eating may change in quantity or whatever else. So I appreciate the fact that, everyone is truly different, and there is a place to start though. Is it a podcast, a book, seeing a specialist. Like I was surprised when I went, because I was assuming, okay, it won't be covered by insurance. Like I'm going to go see this person for nutrition and it's going to be out of pocket. It's going to be, again, it's like one more thing to add to the list. But my therapist was like, well, why don't you go? And she was like, tell them to try this code or something, like, code it this way. And I was like, and lo and behold, she was right. And I was able to get, my nutrition person covered with insurance. So it's been fantastic. And one of the first things that we discussed were these functional lab tests. And my mind was blown, Dani, because I was like, one, why aren't all of these covered by insurance? This is crazy. And again, if they are for you, you are blessed. For me, none of them were. And so I had to pick and choose what I wanted to do first, because for me, again, they weren't cheap, right? They and everyone's pockets are different, but I'd say for the average person, it's probably not going to be, it could be up there, right? And doing more, multiple at the same time or whatever else, it can be a good little penny. However, I was also blown away because I was just like, how are primary care doctors or other people not promoting this and, shouting from the rooftop? Right. And so, Dani had a good point. I mean, Hannah had a good point yesterday in saying, she wanted to leave the sick model, right? The medical sick model and move into like integrated wellness. And so let's just first define, when people hear functional labs or functional medicine, again, that was a new term for me. So I had never heard of it. I was like, well, how is that different from this medicine or these lab tests, right? So how do you define very easily what functional lab testing is?
Yeah, for sure. So conventional medicine or testing, you're really looking at treating symptoms or diagnosing disease. To give you a very specific example, I'm a pretty healthy person. Honestly, my goal is to avoid healthcare, to be so healthy that I don't have to use it. But in 2022, I was having chest pains for 2 weeks. And I never have like weird symptoms. My husband's like, you need to go to the doctor. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm like, okay, fine. And he basically forced me out the door. And I'm like, I'm having these chest pains. And I think I honestly was in there for 5 minutes. And they gave me a prescription for omeprazole, which is to like treat heartburn. And I'm just like, I got home and threw it in the garbage. And I'm like, nope, like that's not going to solve the problem. And so functional testing is about getting to the root cause of the symptoms. It's not treating the symptoms. It's why are the symptoms there? Not just let's take a pill and, make you feel better for 24 hours. Just why do we have those symptoms? So we're looking more at the whole body or the whole person and how the whole body functions. So functional testing is weird because I say it's zooming in, but also zooming out. We're looking at the full picture, but we're also digging deeper than just your standard lab testing. Because what happens a lot, and maybe you and Hannah talked about this, is that you don't feel good. You go to your doctor. They run, conventional, traditional labs that most people get. And the doctor's like, everything's fine. You're good. But you know yourself and you know something's off. Many people without any diagnosable disease still don't feel good. That's where functional testing comes in. When all your labs are normal, but you still feel awful and you know something's off, that's when you start to look into functional testing. And I know that it could be expensive. So this is where we try to figure out if we're going to go order one test, what is it going to be? And my favorite example for this is people that come to us for fat loss. That's like initially why people reach out. But I love the discovery call. Even though a lot of people are getting away from it, I need to talk to people because they say, I want to lose 30 pounds. But then on their form, they're telling me about their chronic bloating, chronic constipation, diarrhea, stomach pains, their nails, their hair is all being weird. And I'm like, okay, I know you want to lose weight. Let's talk about your GI issues, because weight loss is not going to fix your GI issues. And so they'll say like, Dani, I got a colonoscopy and everything is fine. Colonoscopies are looking for big things, precancerous polyps and colon cancer. A stool test, so functional testing, we use the GI map. We're digging into the microbiome. We're looking deeper. Again, colonoscopy, big things. GI map, comprehensive testing, we're looking at little tiny things like parasites and viruses. And almost always the answers are there. And one of our clients, my favorite quote ever, she goes, oh my gosh, I've been feeling like crap for 4 years and the answers were in my poop the whole time.
That's me. That's That's also me. I too I told the story on the other episode. I did my stool test. We did the GI mapping. I had a whole document of what happened in there and what's going on. And, I think the 5 areas that they were looking at, I was like green in 4, I was red 10 out of 10, and 5 was dysbiosis. Mm-hmm. And so I have leaky gut and I have, gut barrier issues. And I'm just like, what? Like, how is that possible? Like, I don't think I eat terrible and, I'm not overweight, per se, or based on science or whatever. But I was just like, how is that possible? Like, oh my gosh. But, again, when I'm looking at how it's all connected, and again, I have had gut issues for a very long time. I always chalked it up to, bad periods. But that also, years later, I found out I had severe endometriosis and I've, lost both fallopian tubes and had issues with my ovaries, all these different things. And so, but I'm like, now my brain is more so like, okay, thinking back, how much of that was endo related? How much of that was just inflammatory? How much of that was food related? All these different things are my gut health, like how much it was gut, and I'll never know what each thing was, but it's just so crazy how it's all connected. And your point about losing weight, when I went through my kind of, I say, food transition over these last several months and like cleaning up my gut health with natural supplements and just changing my diet. I mean, and again, I didn't eat terrible. I mean, I said I'll have my cheat meals here and there. But I felt like I was doing really, really good. But then I realized there are certain foods for me that are just a no-go at this point. And, cutting out gluten and dairy, cutting out, sticking to a very, strict anti-inflammatory kind of diet. For me, it has been, really, really helpful. And like, I haven't been not bloated in so long. I can't even tell you, but the last probably 6 months, I've lost like 20 some pounds and I feel better. And like my fatigue isn't the way it used to be. Like, yeah, I still have my days and I could do everything right one day and it's still there, right? Endo's chronic, it doesn't go away. There's other stuff happening, but overall, I feel like my body is like, how do I explain it? It just feels like it's operating more efficiently, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, it was, I won't say major changes, but what I told my nutritionist was they're intentional changes. So it's not hard. It's just very intentional. Mm-hmm. And even the products that I've, been using, and, looking at, the almond milks, for example, and it's like, if it has more than 3 ingredients, I don't want it. If it has added sugars, I don't want it, things like that. But I thank you for breaking that down when it's very easy to understand, because I think, again, people are like, well, but I do labs at the doctor and, I do blood work there and there. I'm like, it's not the same thing. I'm trying to tell y'all, it's not the same thing. So let's get into different types of tests. I know that there are so many, so we're not going to dive in on all of them. But what would you say are some of the key tests based on your experience and your clientele that are mostly beneficial, I think, for women in general, and then also for women who are either trying to conceive from a natural standpoint or spontaneous standpoint, or people who are in the infertility space? Again, you all know the drill. This is not a substitute for your protocols, plans, and doctors and all of that good stuff. But what are some of the tests that you think would be really good to look into at least?
Yeah, for women in general, the Dutch test, maybe you've heard of it, comprehensive hormone test. We love the Dutch Plus because we're looking not only at sex hormones and their metabolites, so how the estrogen metabolism, but also we're looking at the adrenals, so cortisol, your stress, and most women are stressed out, whether they're trying to conceive or not. I actually did a Dutch test in 2021 after getting off 12 years of birth control. 4 or 5 months later, after getting off the pill, which I did at the exact same time I started my business. Don't recommend getting off the pill and starting a business at the same time, okay? 10 out of 10 don't recommend, but that's what happened. We always do everything at once. And 4 to 5 months later, I felt like kind of brain fog and something didn't feel right. And that's when I started taking courses, functional testing courses. And I'm like, I'm going to do a Dutch test and just see what's up. And I was 28 years old. I had almost zero progesterone. It was in the post-menopausal range. And I had really high estrogen. And not surprising, because in the Dutch Plus, you look at cortisol through a 24-hour period. It was decent until before bedtime, where it's spiked, where it's supposed to go down. And that's because of my work habits as a business owner, computers at night. So this was a rude awakening, just because I don't go get annual labs done at the doctor's. But I was like, and I wouldn't have found out anyway that I had postmenopausal progesterone at 28 when I knew, hey, in the next few years, you're going to want to get pregnant. And so I was like, I got to do something about this. And so even though I was a dietitian, I was healthy and working out, I had very unhealthy work-life balance. I was working 14 hours a day. So it's pretty depleting. And I guess the fun short version of this success story was I kind of dialed back my work, focused on eating enough. Because sometimes when you're busy, you tend to subconsciously or unintentionally undereat. And 8 months later, I redid the Dutch to see if I fixed it, and I had really good progesterone. My estrogen was better. My cortisol looked normal. It was like a beautiful before and after. And then when we decided, hey, let's make a baby, in hockey terms, I said, all right, pull the goalie. I got pregnant on the first try, I was like, okay, that doesn't always happen. And maybe I got lucky, but also I put in a year and a half of work into this. So for me, the Dutch Plus was the starting of my successful pregnancy and baby journey. So that's our favorite, because you're looking at a little bit more than just the sex hormones. I think the stress piece is really, really important. If people need to dive deeper into the sex hormone piece, because the Dutch Plus is a 24-hour test, there is Dutch cycle mapping, which you're looking more at the whole month. So if someone has no period at all, they wouldn't know when to test for the Dutch Plus. So you're kind of sampling throughout the whole month.
Wow. That is really, and I'm at the point now where I'm excited to hear stories like this. Hannah loves to geek out about these different things, and kind of so do I a little bit, not super, super deep, enough, because I'm like, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And again, I think, again, our goal here is not to tell you that, you do all of these things and it's going to change the outcome. We know there is just so many barriers when it comes to trying to conceive, not just trying to conceive, but also, staying pregnant and bringing home a baby. Right. And so, but I think what I always mention now is that I'm trying to create the best environment. And while I wish I would have known these things 5+ years ago, as I'm still in the space of trying to get to that end goal, knowledge is power. And I hope that, again, in having these wellness conversations, having these functional, wellness lab testing and all of this good stuff, it will help somebody else start at a different place. And just be more empowered to seek more answers. Because like you said, it's really more about just the foundational space that we're putting ourselves through. Because no matter which way all these things go, your body's still going through a lot. And, why not start it in a better place, a healthier place versus trying to, do it in the middle or go through all of it and then have to kind of, again, do what I'm doing. I feel like I'm going backwards now. I'm kind of literally have done things in reverse. But thank you for sharing that. And I think it's also important for you to tell people, like, how do they find out about these things? Because again, I had a girlfriend of mine who's also kind of been a mentor over the years. She's very big on holistic wellness and all of the things. And so we always chat about different things we've done. And she had gotten some functional testing done, and she had referred me to the place that she went. They are in different states and cities across the country, but the one that she went to was actually in Wisconsin. And it's virtual because she's on the East Coast as well. And so that's who I initially did my, first consult and kind of rundown with. And I did my first, the food kind of inflammatory food allergy test with, before I found a local person. So and I also found out randomly through this that there is a lab testing center in my area in Richmond where you can get any lab done anytime. I think it's really called Any Lab or something. And I was like, I had to go there to do something else. And I was just like, wait, you're always here? Like I could just walk in, pay this money and get whatever I want done. I don't need a referral. I don't need insurance. I don't need a doctor to tell me. They're like, yeah, let's call it Any Labs. And I was in shock. I mean, I was like, I'm never leaving. But is that common? Do you think that it's worth people first going to someone, like, your business or a local business to kind of get the coaching to figure out what they should get first? Or how do you think they should go about finding these different tests?
Yeah, that's a great question. Locally, like for me, just to give you an example, most people in my town that do functional testing are private practices that are run by nurse practitioners. Because if you go to your PCP, and I do think that conventional labs are helpful, that's a good starting point, and it's typically covered by insurance. So if you feel off, that would be a step one. Go see your doctor, get traditional labs done, because then we can check that box. If everything's fine, great. That's probably a good thing. You probably don't have a disease or something, super, super concerning. And so when it comes to functional testing here, and maybe most towns and cities are like that, you're looking more for private practices. I've never heard of any labs. I live in a town with 50,000 people, so we don't have like big fancy lab places. But I do, it's a small town, so we refer people to each other. So these nurse practitioners that I know, like there's like 3 locally that also do similar functional testing to us. There's also a lot of people like us who do it online because, here it's -20 in the winter. Nobody wants to leave their house. And so it's nice that you can find, if you can't find someone locally also that you trust and that listens to you, that's something that we see a lot, is that people don't feel heard. Now they start seeking help somewhere else, which I highly recommend. Advocate for yourself, get a second opinion. Of course, you can do the classic Google functional testing, functional practitioner near me. But I think just word of mouth, like someone had a good experience with someone, they tell you. Again, why we have the discovery call, it's no BS. If I don't think I'm going to help you, I'm going to be honest. And it comes down to cost when it comes to functional testing. Most are not covered by insurance. Some can be covered by HSA, FSA, which is really nice, especially in the new year. That kind of started back up, so people are excited to use that. But that's why I do the discovery call, is that I can be like, okay, you got a lot going on. If I were to recommend one test, it would be the GI map or the Dutch test or the hair mineral test, which is Hannah's obsession. She loves the hair mineral test. I did it postpartum. Postpartum is very depleting, so that's very insightful. But I would kind of ask around, be like, hey, like, do you know anyone that does functional testing in town? Because I always trust like people that I know, and then I dig a little deeper to make sure that, this person, of course, knows what they're doing, but they're going to listen, and you can trust that person with your journey.
I'm gonna add the hair mineral test to my list because that one, I haven't heard of that one. So I'm gonna add it to my note to look into. And I guess, as we try to kind of wrap up our conversation, first we want to hear more about the avocado lady, and your sweater and your business, Pivot Nutrition Coaching. So please tell us more about it and if you're available to people outside of your area.
Yeah, definitely. So Pivot started all in June 2021. I actually did my launch right before 4th of July weekend. Again, don't recommend doing a launch before the long weekend where you're going on vacation. I was actually on a road trip to South Dakota. Don't do that. Pivot is actually inspired by Friends. If you watch Friends, the sitcom, that's where Pivot came from. If you look a little bit closer at my logo, it might look like just an avocado, but the center is a donut because we do believe that all foods fit. This doesn't mean you need to eat donuts. This doesn't mean that I promote, junk foods. But the thing is, most people want to have a cupcake at their kid's birthday, and that's okay. We help people include all foods while still improving their health, achieving their goals, and not feeling guilty about it. The last thing we want is for people to feel guilt or shame. So that's why the avocado donut is there, to remind you that there is a balance. And I think that most people want that balance. They want to be able to have a glass of wine or pizza on a Friday night with friends, but still keep progressing towards a healthier, happier them. We have a handful of dietitians on our team, all female staff right now, different specialties. You already heard from Hannah. She's our functional dietitian, does more, hormone health, GI stuff, autoimmune, the HTMA test, so the minerals, she loves it. And then I have a dietitian who is a little bit older. She's our menopause specialist. So she works with most of our women over 50 because she's in it. She's on a hormone replacement therapy. She gets it. And people love that they're in the same phase together and they can talk to someone that can relate. And then other specialties like PCOS, sports nutrition. I'm the sports dietitian on the team. Those are kind of the main ones, but one of our most important goals with our clients is fostering a healthy relationship with food. Because if you don't have that, you're less likely to have sustainable results. We've realized that mindset is at the foundation of long-term health and maintaining your results long-term. So that's a little bit about the business. I could go all day, so I'm just going to stop there. But the sweater is from Canada. So if you're like, I need that sweater, my mom bought it as a joke. She sent it to me for my birthday last year. That's the only thing she sent. No money, nothing like that. Here's like an avocado sweater. And now she's like, it's the best thing I ever bought you. Because
you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
I love that. I love everything about it. I love the all female powerhouse staff. I love the donut in the middle because we need a little bit of just pick me up every once in a while. And sometimes that may do it that day.
We don't here we say fuel foods and fun foods, and it makes you feel less bad.
Yeah, because again, we're human. And I think, again, to your point, sustainable wellness is the key. And to do that, I also truly believe in having that balance and having, again, something that just, gives you a little bit to keep you going. And it's realistic. It has to be in my brain. I'm not a, super athlete and, all of these, high performance sports person. So I'm an everyday person who, every once in a while needs French fry. So I love it. So what is something that you want to, out of all we discussed, what do you want to leave with our community at the end of the day?
Yeah, two things, because I couldn't pick one. Advocate for yourself. So important. Get a second opinion. If you're trying to get pregnant and you're struggling, you don't have to wait a year before you do something. Be proactive. Get that second opinion. And just remember that you don't have to go at this alone. It's okay to ask for help. I feel like a lot of women pride themselves in like, I can do it all. When I had my baby, I had no daycare for 9 months. And I'm a business owner. And I was like, I can't not have daycare and run a full-time business. So I was asking so many people for help just so I could go to pelvic floor therapy, get back to strength training, do a few Zoom calls, do a few discovery calls. The village of Grand Forks, North Dakota helped me go back to work so I could help more people. So ask for help if you're struggling.
Let's normalize asking for help. So let's just, and it doesn't matter what area of your life, but let's do that. I love that. Dani, thank you so much for being a part of our big community. How can people connect and find you online if they want to reach out to Pivot or reach out to you individually?
Yeah, for sure. So our website is pivotnutritioncoaching.com. And then my Instagram at DaniVRD. Those are the best places to find me. You can follow my journey as I try to conceive again. I decided I was ready for number 2. And Hannah, yesterday, she goes, hey, if you're not pregnant soon, we're ordering a Dutch test. So.
And that's the kind of friend that you need.
Exactly.
Who knows what you need.
I told her that I'm feeling like it's coming soon, because the first few months we tried, my husband had this really gross firefighter Movember mustache that he grew for like an extended period of time. And now that it's gone, I'm feeling more fertile. So if I get pregnant soon, it's because there's no more mustache, you guys. So follow along.
That's hilarious. Well, of course, we are always wishing nothing but the best. Again, no matter how it comes to you, we know it's a lot, and it is another life transition. So we are praying that all goes well and you will be welcoming number 2 very, very soon. But thank you for being a part of Fertility Ain't Fair. And I hope you all reach out to Dani and her team to get the help, resources, and wellness that you so much might need. Thanks, Dani. So that wraps us up for this episode of Fertility, the podcast. Again, I'm your host, Britt, and I'm thanking Dani for popping in with our community. If you want to link with her, if you want to know more, if you want to get some functional lab testing going, please reach out to her and Hannah and her whole entire all-female powerhouse team is super, super dope out there doing it big. They're actually in different parts of the country, North Dakota, Cali, I'm sure other places, but it's a virtual business. So you want it, they got it, and they got you. So in the meantime, make sure you check us out on our website, fertilityaintfair.com. And of course, follow us on Instagram at fertilityaintfair. I feel like I'm a little bit rusty, like still going into the second episode of this season. I need to get myself back in podcast mode, y'all. Bear with me. But in the meantime, make sure to check us out, and we are looking forward to what else we have in store for this season 4 of Fertility Ain't Fair. As always, if you have a guest or a topic that you want to, let me know about, shoot me the DM. I'm here. I want to hear all about it. And as always, I am your forever friend in fertility. Stay hopeful.